Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of Talking Germany, the show where we do just that. Now, Berlin is often described as one of the coolest cities in the world. And one of the biggest selling points is undoubtedly its culture. And our guest today is one of the big players on the cultural scene here in the German capital. Lawyer, sponsor, impresario, manager, middleman. He's even been given that august title, Renaissance Man. And here he is in person, Peter Raue.
Great.
Thank you very much for joining us today on Talking Germany. You've been in the arts business, you've been in the arts world for many decades now, and I know that you are just as enthusiastic as ever. Where did your fascination with the arts first begin?
I think as when I went to school. Perhaps it has to do that I was very, very bad in sports. And so I looked for another field I can work and can love. And I was collecting postcards from Degas, from Van Gogh, the old artists too. And so I learned, or I tried to learn about art. This was the one side. And the other side was that I went in the theater as long as I can see it. It was the world for me which was fascinating from the first moment. And when my parents came from visiting theater, I liked the program to see the stage. There was a stage with a step. Couldn't imagine how it runs. This was really fascinating from the first moment I can think and I can decide what I want to do.
That's amazing. And it has remained still the story of your life until today. When we were talking earlier, just before the programme began, you said that for you, I thought it was very interesting, culture and the arts are fuel for your life.
This is right. Yeah. It's my life. It's my life in my profession. I'm a lawyer, but I'm working more or less only for artists, musicians, art, and I'm a professor in this field for copyright. And so I have not to work with clients who has problems in financing or so. My life is art in profession and in the private life.
Wonderful stuff. Well, as you've already heard from Peter Raue himself, he's a lawyer, he's an impresario, he's a sponsor of the arts. You will have gathered, he's a man of many, many facets. Mr. MoMA, I like that title. Let's go back to 2004. It was a very, very special atmosphere here in the city when that exhibition took place. Can you take us back to how you saw it from your perspective?
This is an aspect of love. From the first moment. I was sitting with the chief Glenn Laurie of the MoMA in Berlin in a restaurant, and I asked him, what are you doing with the art in the time you are closing the museum for the new building? And he told me, listen, we have 4 or 5 stations in Europe and we give our paintings at these stations. And I said, you're crazy. You have to go to Berlin. And we are discussing why it must be Berlin. The founder of the MoMA was in Germany 27, and he had a feeling that it's going in a bad direction. And this was the reason of founding the museum. The artists of the time were in MoMA and not in Germany. And so we decided to do it, and he said it's very expensive, and I said, give me the money and we will discuss it, and he said what it costs. And so we knew that this exhibition will cost around about 8 million euros. It's a lot of money. And in the newspapers I can read how stupid we are. We will never earn our money. And I was convinced it will run because it's a very interesting aspect. What do the Americans, and the MoMA is the Museum of Modern Art in America, what is the aspect, the point of view of the art of the 20th century? It's like a canon. It's like, that's it. That was the art. And it was very exciting to see that the Americans gave us the artists till 45, only European artists. And with beginning of 35, no European artists. No Beuys, no Fontana, no Francis Bacon. So it was interesting. This was the one side. And the other side is, it was a hype. It was a must. And it was a great summer. And it was for 7 months. It was not an exhibition in Berlin. It was a museum in Berlin for 7 months. And this is one of the moments of the success, I think so.
I want to pick up on one word that you used there. The word was hype. Yeah. This was a blockbuster exhibition. You organised another one that was of French 19th century art, also from New York in 2007, a couple of years later. Both of these exhibitions, the word that is used very often is a blockbuster. That implies hype. Is that the way the art world is these days? Does it have to be a circus?
No. Yes and no, both. Of course, and this was one of the problems, was that politicians said to the directors of the museum, make the same like MoMA and you don't have ask for money. This is absolutely wrong. We need exceptional exhibitions which are difficult, which are not a success on the one hand. On the other hand, the blockbuster, it's not wrong if there is any idea behind. And I said what was the feeling of the MoMA exhibition. It was not only good paintings coming from New York to Berlin. It was a statement of the history of the 20th century. And so it's more than a blockbuster. It's a blockbuster too. So what? If we have in Amsterdam Vermeer, it's a blockbuster too. But it's wonderful to see 20 or 30 paintings of this great artist.
OK. You're a lover of art, you're an art collector, you're a watcher of art, an art expert. I would like to ask you this question, because you're talking about art history there. There's always been incredibly fascinating epochs, fascinating eras and remarkable decades of art, something like the 60s, for example.
Yeah.
Are we now living in a remarkable period, or are we waiting for the next revolution in the way art works to happen?
This is a difficult question. My heart says the best time is not this time in art. But perhaps it's wrong. If I would be 30 years old, I would say, forget about Zero, forget about Taschism. Now is the art we need. This is the language of our time. So I'm very in two minds to say it is. My interesting is not so very much in the art of nowadays.
Yep. Absolutely contemporary art. Yeah. It's not that, and it lies in. Quick answer?
Yeah. I don't understand it so very well. When I was 30 years, I was in friendship with the artists. I was growing up with them. They was unknown and they are known today. And I knew exactly what they are doing and why they are doing this. And my colleague, I have a lot of paintings and sculptures, and all the artists, I'm in friendship with them. And so I understand it better. And if I see now what Jeff Koons is doing, and Damien Hirst, with a schädel,
the skull, the famous skull
with diamonds, and this cost 100 million something, dollar, pounds, euro, it's more or less the same. I don't understand it.
OK. The art collector, Peter Raue. Collecting art is cool. It's often a very good investment. I wonder if it's a good investment for Peter Raue. Maybe he'll tell us. And more collectors are these days keen to show off what they own. Let's take a closer look.
Contemporary art on display in the private gallery of collector and businessman Roman Keudel. He opened this space 2 years ago in the Berlin district of Charlottenburg.
Today, art collectors are the ones who have a very significant influence on the market. They have the spending power that many public institutions or authorities lack. They employ the good curators, who come up with really good concepts, and they create their own art spaces.
The 40-year-old had an old industrial building converted into his own art halls, where he shows private collections largely unknown to the public.
The real advantage of private art galleries is that they're teeming with eccentrics, interested in showing all sorts of things. I show things that are new, young, and exciting. That gives me a buzz, and I would like to share that pleasure with others.
And he is not alone. A remodeled Second World War bunker is home to the collection of Christian Boros. The advertising agency boss only opens his doors to the public on the weekends and only by prior arrangement. 6 new private museums have opened over the past few years in the center of Berlin alone.
When you go ahead and let strangers see your private collection, you don't feel any poorer. It's not soap that gets used up. Instead, you feel that the visitors help make it grow into something bigger than if we just kept it to ourselves.
Collector Thomas Olbricht has just recently opened his museum. The heir to a German cosmetics company owns one of the biggest art collections in Europe. But private collectors don't always set up their own museums. Sometimes their works adorn the walls of public institutions. For example, the renowned Hamburger Bahnhof in Berlin is home to the Erich Marx collection. Whatever their motivation, private collectors are a bonus for Berlin, though they do pose a threat to state-run museums, because ultimately, they determine what is worth keeping.
Peter Raue, are there good collectors and bad collectors?
Yeah, or I'll say there are collectors I like the works and other I like not so very much. If they are bad, this is a question of point of view again.
It's not just about taste, though, is it? Collectors do have, we heard it in that report, they have a real impact on the market and they have a real impact on art and artists.
They do have, of course. But the collectors we saw, they built their own museum, and they can hang the museum what they want. Yeah. And Boros is absolutely outstanding. It's one of the most exciting museums I saw in the last years.
Sure.
And what Koidlister is great too. Yeah. But it's, of course, an impact on the other side. This is the art you have to have. Yeah. And there's the way you have to think about.
I'm a little bit confused there, though, because it's often said about, I mean, we've talked about the MoMA, we've talked about the art scene a little bit in the US. We know that there are patrons of the arts in the US. It's a great and noble tradition. People put up a lot of money to sponsor the arts, to have museums built. It is often said that tradition does not exist in Germany. Is that true? Is it changing, or where are we?
This is true, it doesn't exist, but it's a little bit growing up. The difference is, in America, the patrons are giving away what they collected in the last years, from Tannhäuser to nowadays. In Germany, the collectors like to show the people, that's my collection, this is my point of view for that what is great and essentially in the art. That's a different. This is more, in Europe and Germany, it's an ego trip. And in America, it's a love trip.
Well, I've got to ask you then, when you put it that way, are you on an ego trip? You have a very big art collection. What's going to happen to it? Yeah?
It's very, very private. I would never say they have to go in the museum. It's every piece. I love it if I go in my office or at home and I speak about the art. I say always, this is the greatest what you can imagine. Every painting, I love it like the kids, and so. I have no idea what's the future of this. I have two wonderful...
There's not going to be a Peter Raue museum one day with
ever.
The whole...
I have two wonderful kids and they should have it if I'm not living again.
Very good for them. Yeah? So you're a passionate collector. We're back there with your passion for art. That's the key to it.
That's the key to it.
That's the key to it. OK. Another project that Peter Raue has been involved in, efforts to establish a memorial for the murdered Jews of Europe here in the centre of the German capital, Berlin. Well, that memorial has now been in place for the past 5 years. Let's have a look.
A labyrinth consisting of exactly 2,711 concrete pillars. The Holocaust Memorial in the heart of Berlin is a magnet for tourists and has become an important part of the itinerary for many visitors to the city.
It's just like a landscape, and you dive into it, you look up and you get this mixed feelings.
Well, you get lost, you feel lonesome, and it's cold.
The site also has a center that informs visitors about the history of the Holocaust. The initiative that supported the setting up of the memorial strives to publish the names and biographies of as many victims as possible. For Lea Russ, the long battle was worth it.
8 to 10 million visitors have been to the Field of Pillars, 2 million to the center. It can only take a few people at once, and that's extremely positive.
The Holocaust Memorial is not intended to be treated like a mausoleum. Most visitors clearly agree. Long gone is the time when the media and committees argued endlessly about what form the memorial should take.
Peter Raue, we saw there in that report a child hopping from one of the pillars of the Holocaust Memorial to another pillar. A child playing, playfully. Are you happy about that? Are you troubled by that? Is that?
Yeah. This memorial is not refusing the people. They come to live in this situation, think about what happened. There are borders. I don't like if they have the picnic there. This is without any sensitivity and any feeling what happens. But why shouldn't I say to a little child, you can't hit and play or so? It's fine. It's a part of our town. You have to go. You have to live in this project. This is one of the great moments of this work.
Let's be honest. It's a tourist attraction.
Yeah, and I like it because this memorial will show the world that we know what terrible crimes were starting from Germany with the Holocaust. And if you want to bring the message to the next generation, you must have a place where they want to go. If you make a museum far away from Berlin and say you can go there, they would do it perhaps. So we are visiting the KZ too. But
the concentration camp, for example, at Sachsenhausen outside
Sachsenhausen. So it is absolutely necessary.
Can go. Yeah.
It's a must for everybody who is thinking about that. But there come a lot of people from all the world. Some of them from the youth didn't know when they came what happened in Germany, and they asked, "What is a field with all these stones? What happens?" And if you say this is a remembrance of 6 million murdered Jews, then they're thinking about how did it happen? How could it happen? How could it happen in a land which is a land of culture? All these questions are associations, are the moment you say what happens there. And this is the reason I'm happy that 8 million people come every year to see it. You tell them the terrible story. You say, we in Germany, we know what we did, and we are responsible that it can never be again.
It was a long and tortured process before we finally in Berlin agreed what was going to be built, where it was going to be built, what it was going to look like. Just tell me a little bit more about what your role in that whole process was.
In my office, the friends of this memorial were founded, a Verein, association. And it took a long time to find out what is the language to build such a memorial. Because what you have to tell, what you have to call back in your mind is a crime. You have no words for this. And have the artist words for this. A lot of memorials we have in the concentration camps are good-minded, but from the art aspect, terrible.
So they're well-intentioned.
Yeah. And so we have 2 juries to find out the best way. And to be honest, when the decision was for the Eisenman-Serra project, I was not happy with this.
You were sceptical?
Yeah, I was sceptical because I said, is it really right that the biggest crime of the history needs the biggest place to remember? And I thought there must be other solutions, a little bit softer, a little bit less. But at least I'm convinced it's really one of the answers you can give. And it is in the middle of the town, 100 meters on the right side of the Brandenburger Tor. The best place you can do with this area, earn a lot of money if you would sell it. Now, and this place, we have the commitment that is our history too.
Let's talk about Berlin in a broader sense. Let's just lighten the tone a little bit. At the beginning, I said that Berlin is one of the... people say that Berlin is... We're talking about the heart of Berlin here. People say that Berlin is one of the coolest cities in the world. Did I get it right?
cool in the sense of high. It is really, in Europe, I think, in this time, it may change in the next years, I don't know, it's the most exciting town, which means art, from theater, opera, music, and art too. And this has a lot of reasons. This is the coming together of the two towns, on the one hand. The other hand is Berlin is the cheapest town you can imagine. It's
important, isn't it? That it is a very inexpensive city for such
Absolutely.
a metropolis. Yeah.
If you go to London and you want to have a small room outside of London, you have to pay a lot of money. Berlin is cheap, and in Berlin there is no society which is closed for poor people. You can go in the jeans in the Philharmonie, nobody asks you. You can have tickets for €5 for these concerts. Yeah. And we have a lot of galleries, hundreds of galleries. Yeah. So the young artists have to start in a gallery. They have to find a gallery. And we need a place. It's like the New York in the 60s, where we went to Soho.
And a lot of people are coming from New York to Berlin. It's interesting, I think we should... There's that very famous quote by the Berlin mayor, Klaus Wowereit, that he said a couple of years ago that some people are not so happy with. I think it's pretty good. Berlin is poor but sexy.
Yeah, it is poor but sexy.
You got it right, didn't you?
Yeah. Perhaps it's right, yeah.
OK, Peter Raue, we're going to have to wrap up, I'm afraid. It's been fascinating talking to you, but I've got some... We're going to move on to our quiz to finish the show now. Some quick questions, quick answers. Are you a showman or a shy man?
I'm afraid of showmen.
Public subsidy or private sponsorship?
Public subsidy.
Event or exhibition?
Exhibition.
Expressionism or impressionism? Personal taste now.
Expressionism.
Art is business or art is art?
Art is art.
I like that answer. That's what we've got time for with our Renaissance man, Peter Raue. If you've enjoyed his company as much as I have, then do come back next week. And until then, just